What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I got a couple more stories about the trip up to the Redwoods. But before I get to that, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you guys who watch the videos. I put a lot of work into those videos to really try to relay the experience of being there. And it looks like they were very well received, so I'm very, very grateful for that. One of the things about not putting ads on the videos is that the channel is very, very slow to grow because it doesn't really get picked up in recommendations via YouTube. And so I really do depend on your guys' support to help kind of spread the word a little bit. And I'm also incredibly grateful for those of you who have contributed with the donations or purchased the ebook or any of the box sets, because I really do depend on that greatly. And sometimes it's a little tough kind of making ends meet, but I do appreciate all the support you guys have given me. And I think it's kind of built a pretty awesome community here of people. And I really don't get the sort of negative comments that you often see on a lot of the other channels as they really start to grow. And I think a lot of that is just because of the awesome sense of community here. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So I've got a couple stories about the Redwoods, stuff that really didn't make it into the videos. And it just tells a little bit kind of more about the trip. So it was on my fourth day in the Redwoods, which was the day 3 video, which was the day that I found that scene that has the fog, the mist, and then all the beautiful redwoods, and in the moment where I kind of felt like I was kind of in my own element there. And so after shooting that photo, I went back to my truck, and then I went for a drive to another state park that was nearby. And this is one that my wife and I had visited in years past. And there's a trail that we had hiked before. And I remember that there's 2 trails that are kind of similar. I couldn't remember which one it was that had this really beautiful scene I had photographed. And there are these kind of really big loop trails. And the trails are about 5 miles if you do the entire loop. And so I just kind of, as a 50-50 guess to try to figure out which one it was. So I went ahead and kind of hit the trail, and it was really beautiful. It was raining just a little bit at the time. And I reached a point on the trail where you can kind of go to the right or go to the left. And either way, it's part of this big loop. I remember seeing off to the left that there's a little sign there kind of on a fence post that was saying, trail closed ahead, something along those lines. But the place that it mentioned wasn't an area that struck me as being on the particular hike I was going to be on. So I figured I could just do the whole loop, no problem. So I kind of start going along that hike, and that was a scene where I'm kind of hiking through the trees and the wind is starting to pick up just a little bit. Not enough where I'm kind of worried about anything falling from above, but it's just a little bit of a wind. And that wind was there because there was a lot of rain that was kind of on its way. And it started getting darker and darker and darker, and then a rain started to fall. And I'm about halfway into this hike now. I'm about 2.5 miles into the hike. And I'm reaching a point where now I'm going to have this downhill, and I'm going to kind of start looping around back to kind of where I started. And as I'm hiking along, I see that the trail doesn't really look like it's had anyone on it for a long time. It's really overgrown. I don't see any footprints. And I start thinking in the back of my mind, is the area up ahead, is this going to be an area that has the closed trail? And all these sort of scenarios start running through my mind, because I was thinking, well, maybe I could probably just kind of get across this creek and get back to the road, but the underbrush was so thick. And I just kind of keep pushing ahead, but all the while it just gets narrower and narrower to the point where I'm actually just kind of like pushing apart all the greenery on either side of the trail to kind of get through there. And I start going through my mind like, why is it that this trail is closed? Is it there was a tree that fell? Is it that, part of it's kind of like eroded or something along that from all the rain that we had during the winter? Or maybe there's a mama bear with her cubs that kind of is nearby the trail, and there's been some incidents in the past, and they close the trail to kind of guard against that. So all the while I'm kind of making my way back, but I'm kind of beyond the point of no return, because if I'm going to head all the way back, I've got a really long hike at this point. So I kind of start picking up the pace a little bit, figuring that whatever obstacle it is, I will be able to kind of find some way around that once I get to it. And in some ways, I almost started to panic a little bit, just because I start thinking, it's getting dark, the rain's on the way. I don't know what is up ahead as far as the trail. And I kind of start going faster and faster. Eventually, I see that same sign again, which means I'd done the entire loop. And when I looked at the sign again, it showed that the area that was closed was actually a ways away. But it's just one of those things where you kind of get in your own head, and there's this contrast between the moment of standing in the forest earlier in that day and just being at peace with my surroundings and in this strange new environment, to the point where now there's almost like a little bit of a panic that sets in, which really isn't a very good thing, but it all worked out just fine in the end. There's another story as well. I forget what day this was, but it was on one of the days where it had been raining a fair amount, which really could have been any of the days. And the roads that I would drive on within the area that I was in, there's most of them were dirt roads, and there were some areas that weren't in all that great of shape. So you gotta kind of take your time a little bit in areas, but there's also times when it was incredibly narrow, where the road is just a single lane road at that point, and you're kind of going between trees, lots of blind corners, and so the safe speed to be driving through those areas is probably about 15 miles an hour, maybe even a little bit less at times as you're kind of coming around a blind curve. There are some areas where you can kind of pull over and park, but by and large, it's a pretty narrow area. And there's one time when, after the day was done, I was kind of heading back to camp for the evening. And I had a really nice day of just kind of wandering through the forest and just kind of enjoying my time out there. I'm driving along and, going about 10, 15 miles an hour, all these blind turns and stuff. And then I look in my rearview mirror and there's this sedan that's like right on my tail, like right behind me. Now, I'm a very, very patient person, which I think you kind of have to be when it comes to landscape photography, especially if you're shooting large format and all the stuff that kind of comes with it. But I'm a very patient person, but there's some things I don't really have a lot of patience for, which is ironically impatient people. I don't know how that works. It's some sort of strange cycle there, but there's something about when someone is behind you telling you to kind of get out of their way in an area that's very unsafe to do so, and they're trying to pressure you to go faster. It really, really bugs me because it just seems like an incredibly selfish mood. So oftentimes I would just kind of pull over and let the person by, but in this case it was pretty narrow, and it seemed like more than anything the person was just trying to pressure me just to go faster in a way that was very unsafe to do so. So I have a Toyota 4Runner, and then the car behind me is some sort of kind of gold-colored sedan. We're driving along, and I know that up ahead is a long straightaway where I have a very clear view up ahead. Again, pretty narrow, and there's an area up ahead that has some pretty bad road damage. There is an area where these big potholes are filled with water. And even in my 4Runner, I really like to slow down a little bit and to kind of go over it and take my time because I don't want to, damage anything or lose control or anything like that. But this car is right on my tail the entire time. And so I know that stretches up ahead. I can see up ahead there's no cars coming. The car behind me doesn't know what's up ahead. So I do as he wishes and I speed up a little bit. So I was going maybe 25 miles an hour or so, and just plowed right through that area where there was some road damage. And strangely enough, after he kind of followed me through that, he kind of backed off a little bit. So I don't know, maybe some degree of justice there. But it was a really fun trip up to the Redwoods. It's definitely an area that I'll be returning to in future years. I never really had the really thick fog to work with, which would be kind of fun to experience that, where you have the fog and then the light rays shooting through it and all that. So I'm hoping that maybe next year I'll kind of run into some situations where I have something along those lines to work with. But it's an area I could probably spend the rest of my life exploring. It's very rejuvenating, and I really enjoyed my time up there. But now I am starting to work on the videos from the trip to Utah. It was a pretty interesting trip, and hope to get those posted here pretty soon. So I'm definitely looking forward to sharing that experience as well. But I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone for watching the Redwoods videos, for commenting, for, I read through all the comments. I try to reply. It takes me a little bit of time sometimes, but also I thank you for all the contributions, the ebook sales, and everything along those lines, because it really does make a huge difference, and I really do appreciate that. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next week.